For centuries, Alderaan stood as a beacon of hope in the Republic. But the Empire came.
I have chosen to test this station's destructive power on your home planet of Alderaan.
Peace while you suffer. The Emperor drowns you in black waters.
He wants me to be Darth Revan again. Serve him as I did centuries ago. He made me a Sith Lord and named me Darth Revan.
The Force does not control you. You saved your Guardian using something you thought was important. But your motives are still aligned with the Jedi Code.
To arms, men! Defend the throne!
Anakin Skywalker was weak. I destroyed him.
He was weak and foolish, like his father.
So I destroyed him.
Master Windu, you have fought gallantly. Worthy of recognition in the archives of the Jedi. It is finished.
To them it is.
I have been waiting for you. Is it true that he is the chosen?
Hi, it's Ellena.
It's a water! Yeah, it's Alex.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was provoked by something that we were talking about not quite an hour ago. Our own kind of like Watto story.
The hero we deserve.
Clean the racks, a Star Wars story.
Need the golden trio of... Is it Watto?
It's Watto, Viceroy
Warwick Davis.
Gunnery. Yeah, Warwick Davis, Viceroy Gunnery, Jar Jar.
And Boba. No, not Boba.
We could have Boba Fett in there.
True, we need an adversary.
Jedi, the second black man in the galaxy, killed by, I don't know why he's Mickey Mouse, he killed my dad with a lightsaber, which is rubbish, because Mandalorian armor is able to deflect lightsabers, so what? And I'm here now. Oh, I'm gonna clean the racks.
Oh, Baba Joe.
Yeah, and Baba Joe. The true hero, the destroyer of the first Death Star, and general all-round nice chap. All he does is collect birds in the back of his weird cage and just stroll around.
Yeah, as one does.
No idea how he ended up on. I can't remember. I wanted to say Jeddah, but that's Rogue One. What's that planet? Jakku. There we go.
Jakku.
Yeah. So I took the liberty today of introducing you to a bit more lore about Darth Maul.
Mm-hmm.
We watched pretty much his campaign towards conquering and leading Mandalore into a new tomorrow. But the real reason why I showed you that was because it was more around Maul focus as opposed to all the Mandalorian stuff. So did that add anything to the character for you?
Yeah, because you see his interaction with his brother and he sense that he is the master, his brother is the apprentice, even though looking at them physically, even though there's all that stuff with the Night Sisters.
Savage is far stronger physically than Maul is, but Maul's more cunning and he's more athletic, he's more of a martial artist, whereas Savage is just more of a brute, he's a tank.
Yeah, you see, because you never really get that sense in the prequels that he's coming. Well, he's in about 2 scenes, isn't he, before?
Yeah, so you've got his interaction, well, he's a hologram, and then you see him wandering about Naboo with Viceroy. He is short. Like, Viceroy's taller than him. But yeah, I mean, in all the other scenes, he's portrayed as being giant. And then to see him next to Viceroy, like, he's really not at all. And then you see him on Coruscant with Sidious. And I always love that scene because if you watch it very carefully, you can see that the makeup artist forgot to paint his neck. So he's got a normal pink flesh fleshy neck.
Just, oh my gosh. Trade secrets.
But yeah, so you got to see his drive in that he wanted to lead a new crime syndicate. You got to see the epic fight at the end with Savage and Maul against Sidious.
Oh, so cool.
And then you, but it's still, there's still two gaps that need to be addressed within new Star Wars canon, and that's the gap between where Sidious takes Maul for this unspecified reason of keeping him alive, and then the gap between Solo, where he's still clearly leading a crime syndicate, to his ending up on Malachor, which is where Ezra finds him. I mean, I still really want that fight between Empress Ness and Darth Maul, where maybe Empress Ness could, I mean, she has to die just simply because she isn't in anything else, or at least go off and do her own thing. Maybe she could take over the Pike Syndicate and things like that, or the remaining Pikes, and whoever else Darth Maul's got is his own personal militia, and then goes off and does that kind of part of the rebellion. Maybe joins Saw Gerrera for a short period of time. What are your thoughts on what you'd like to see of Darth Maul now in extended canon? Because we've now got, and this is the first time we're talking about this on the podcast, is that we now have Clone Wars coming back. Hopefully to talk about the fall of Mandalore, a couple of other interesting little tidbits.
Yeah, I would like to see exactly how Maul gets away from Sidious, if he does, or whether Sidious's intentions were
to just let him go and do the whole crime syndicate thing.
That it's more useful to have a potential apprentice wandering around, kind of.
Because he did say in those episodes as Chancellor Palpatine that he was completely unbothered by what was happening with Maul, that he was recruiting pirates. Because in a way, Maul was dealing with their problems. He single-handedly wiped out a fair amount of the Hutts. Through his campaign, numerous Mandalorians died, whether they were on his side or not. Also, the Black Sun leadership, they were slaughtered, and numerous Pikes as well. So he was doing a Republic job in a Republic service in a way of taking leadership, because Darth Maul's approach is very, very much he is the leader, and everyone else is just a disposable means. So he would probably have killed them all.
Yeah.
In the end, anyway.
So it's handy to have him wandering about, getting rid of anyone who might be a problem for Sidious.
Exactly that. Never really thought about it that way, but that's cool. So, I mean, I've said this on podcasts before that I'm just really struggling to figure out what to talk about at the moment, just because we haven't had much news with everything with Kenobi and Boba, which still saddens me.
I still like your vision for the Obi-Wan
Thank you.
film.
But I mean, there was talk, wasn't there, of bringing Kenobi into Episode 9, but I still don't know how they do that, because if Kenobi was to appear in any shape or form, it would be the Alec Guinness ghost as opposed to Ewan McGregor. Unless they're now going to say that ghosts can take on a form however they wish, in which case, why has that never happened before? Why doesn't Yoda just appear as his younger self, like even before Phantom Menace? Why wouldn't Obi-Wan in Episode 6 appear as younger Obi-Wan? I know they couldn't have done that then, but if you're going to introduce that, why wouldn't they?
In the remastered, they could have. Well, they had Hayden Christensen.
They did, yeah. Lots of people don't like that. The Anakin Skywalker that we saw in the original cut was probably how Anakin and Darth Vader would have looked like Anakin would have looked like had he not become Darth Vader, but at that age. But now how I see it is that Anakin Skywalker actually died when he became Darth Vader. So when he repented, I guess, then he would have come back as his lighter self, but all the way up until the period of when he then turned to the dark.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's talk in the Star Wars community and hope that we'll be getting loads of Jedi coming back. I mean, we've had Ahsoka come back, not just within the Clone Wars revamp, but also within Star Wars Rebels after her run-in with Vader or Malachor. Are there any Jedi that you would want to see come back, either alive or as Force Ghost?
I don't actually know. I don't think so.
No. I personally would love to see Qui-Gon Jinn come back as his Force Ghost, along with Kenobi. I would also like to see, just because she's one of my favourite Jedi, Shakti come back, but in a scenario where this is just off the top of my head, but where someone goes to a sacred area of the Jedi where all of the Dead Council members gather, so that they can then gain knowledge on tactics and approaches for battle that worked in the past, and just to talk to the old Jedi Council, so you can have pretty much everyone there.
Yeah.
But yeah, Star Wars, as Harrison said, is in like a state of disarray at the moment.
Kathleen Kennedy.
And we don't really know what their end game is, their approach.
No. I think it needs new leadership.
It does.
Completely.
In the form of Dave Filoni. Get him on that. Because he's shown that he can direct an award-winning series and then do it again. Just because it's animated doesn't mean that he won't be able to do it in a live-action sense. In fact, why not get him to team up with the director of Rogue One? There you go. Lots of people didn't like Rogue One, but those are the people who, or at least from what I've found through personal investigation, those are the people who, for whatever reason, didn't believe that an expansion upon the original story was necessary. And that these stories weren't necessary to tell. I don't agree with that.
No.
Because to just say that the rebels stole the plans to the Death Star and then to see how big this empire is, you'd probably be thinking, how?
So what? Who did this?
So it's important to have that story. It's important to have Solo, just so you can relate more to the characters and you can understand the events that led to the big story that we know and love. Because so long as they don't obstruct it or change anything about it, minus obviously certain aspects like things with Lando and things like that, we're not going to kick up too much of a fuss, because it's just an expansion on what we already love.
Yeah.
Which is why I love the standalone film so much more than this current trilogy, because it's just an expansion on what we love. With that said, I did come to a different conclusion about Star Wars Episode 8 quite recently.
Ooh.
So, what was the complaint about Star Wars Episode 7 primarily?
The only stuff I've heard is that there wasn't enough of the original trio.
Okay. The one that I got was that it was almost like a revamp of Star Wars Episode 4.
That is true.
And then with Rogue One, it was very much the original Star Wars recipe, where they posed us with a light side and a dark side. There was a little bit of talk of in between, but not too much. And then the heroes prevailed, and the end game was accomplished. That's pretty much how Star Wars is run. Then they gave us Solo, which was a gangster film inside a Star Wars universe. The only things for someone who hasn't seen Star Wars, the things that they probably associate Star Wars with is Darth Vader, if they know a little bit, R2-D2, C-3PO and Luke Skywalker, and then lightsabers and blasters. The only thing they got apart from that Maul appearance was the blasters.
Yeah.
So it's very different. This is outside of the Star Wars recipe. You're utilising characters that we know, but it's a very different approach. It was almost like a Guardians of the Galaxy approach, but a more serious version. Yeah. And then with Star Wars Episode 8, we had a completely different recipe because of the way that the story was written, the way that the characters acted, and and the end game was a bit similar to Empire Strikes Back, but I don't know. I felt like it was very different to the Star Wars recipe. So what they've actually done is they've given us a completely even split of original recipe and new recipe. I think people need to stop looking at it as, okay, Rogue One, or this is an opinion of someone, Rogue One and Episode 7 were great, but Star Wars Episode 8 and Solo sucks because it doesn't follow the original recipe. They're doing exactly what we want, but it just in 4 films. So for those who wanted the original recipe and nothing else, they've done that. Yeah. And for those who wanted a revamp or a completely different recipe within the Star Wars universe that we love, they've also done that. So I don't really think we've got much to complain about.
No, I did appreciate the fact that in Episode 8 it was less of a good versus evil. There was shades of grey brought into it. Yeah. Which I could appreciate from a writing standpoint, that it's doing something different in terms of characterisation, and it's not just the typical good, evil, good prevails.
Because if you look deeper into that, and although it's a character that we both didn't enjoy watching, DJ says something quite important where he says good, bad, made up words. So there are always going to be shades of grey. In fact, there's probably very rarely a solid light and a solid dark. There's always going to be that continuous shade. And that's something that we got more of than we had done in the original trilogy and even the prequels. So again, I don't think people can complain too much. No. They've been given what they wanted, maybe not within all the films, but at least in some of them. Everyone's been addressed. The problem now lies with this new agenda that's rising with people like Kathleen Kennedy and stuff, but I think that can be addressed later. We've got, at its core, a good series of Star Wars films because they address different wants and
different elements of
different ideals of different Star Wars fans, because as much as we are a massive community, we're not all the same, because that would be bloody ridiculous if we were. So we all have different ideas of what makes up a good story, and we all have different ideas of where we wanted these characters to go. Through these 4 films, I'd say it's a fairly safe bet to say that 99.9% of us have had something that we enjoyed. Yeah. Even if it wasn't, because that's the problem. That's what they're trying to do. They either could have doomed themselves and written a Star Wars trilogy that either followed the recipe completely, or one that didn't follow it at all, and then had a complete 50-50 split of people who loved it and hated it, and then they would have hated that entire trilogy, as opposed to liking some of it and then hating some of it, which is what they're now doing. I don't know, I feel like that's something that we need to keep in the back of our minds, that we may hate Episode 9 when it comes out, we may hate Solo Part 2 when it comes out, we may hate the Game of Thrones write-up, which I'm hoping won't follow the original Star Wars recipe. It's going to be within Star Wars universe, but it's going to be something completely different. But we've already had something that we enjoyed, and that's kind of what they wanted. Yeah. That's mission accomplished, because they're trying to address such a massive fan base.
You're never going to please everyone, no. So please as many people as you can.
Yeah, with different films, because of overall you have pleased everyone at different points. Yeah, I doubt there's many people out there that look at the 4 films that we now have and extended canon and say they hate all of it. No, because that's insane. Some of them have really there's some really strong ideas there. But also some obviously no film's going to be perfect.
They need different writers and different leadership. I think they've got the core ideas there, but it's how they're actually getting them across that's a little bit iffy at the moment.
What they need to do now is, because although the idea, if it is indeed the way that I've said, that they are trying to address all the different fans, and in doing so have created this very incoherent trilogy. Story films, it matters less, because they are separate stories. They're not linking into one another unless you count the overall universe. They need to create a trilogy that flows right. So it either follows that recipe or it doesn't. Yeah. And then that will address 1/50th of that side of the fan base, and then you've got, in my mind, the Star Wars stories, or the ones that are done by the Game of Thrones lot, that then don't follow that recipe. So you've got both sides that are being pleased in different ways. And if these ran alongside each other, they shouldn't have to, because people should be able to accept when a choice is made that wasn't their own, but apparently they can't. So if they ran alongside each other, I don't see how there could be a problem then.
No, you're doing stuff that's going to satisfy the majority of your audience.
Yeah, I don't think, as a hardcore Star Wars fan, that even I wouldn't even put myself into that category, because that probably falls under the people that started to watch it from the cinema right at the very beginning and know like an insane amount. They're going to be the harder to please, because they have such a vision of how it was and they've been there from the very beginning. But I still think that some of them have to have had something that they enjoyed.
The thing with the original fans, as it were, is that they're probably now all in their at least 50s. So they're a lot older than the current young demographic that it seems a lot of the content is geared towards. And the reason for that, and there are two reasons. Number one is because that's what, and at the end of the day, Disney, and in extension, the people who work for Lucasfilm and LucasArts, they are running a business, so they need to bring in as much money as possible in order to then pay their workers and their staff. And also, this is a children's film. Yeah. This is a children's universe. What you need to do at this point is continue on the children's stuff for the new demographic and for those who enjoy childish films. And I dare say there are a fair amount of us out there, because I watch childish films all the time. But then also do this perhaps standalone story or this different trilogy that then is of a darker theme. To then continue on, because we grow up, we take different views on the world. Something that entertained us, like Jar Jar or the Ewoks way back when, may not entertain us now with it in its newer form. So but people come and go from a fandom, but then the people that stay, they need to either adapt or have things adapt to them. New films that address them in their older ages. Because to say to everyone you just need to change and you just need to like a kiddish regime, that's not gonna flow well. They've got to accept, on the other hand, though, that there will be kids' films, because again, this is mainly aimed at a child's demographic. But you are losing money because of the fact that although children outnumber the older Star Wars fans, perhaps 3-1, you still have that demographic that you're slowly losing because they don't like this childish regime. If you were to address it and then make something that was for an older audience, then you would then harness them as well, because they're taking in this content, and then by extension the kids are still consuming the regular Star Wars trilogy or whatever Rian Johnson intends to do. Is Rian Johnson lost his trilogy now? I think he has.
Damn, that must suck for him. But I suppose with the backlash of Episode 8, that was the logical thing for Disney to do.
Oh, Disney's sacking a lot of people. James Gunn, I mean...
What happened with James Gunn? Was he Marvel?
Yeah, he was
Guardians. Yeah, I heard. So what happened there?
He was found to have had a load of tweets that were very heavily paedophilic.
Oh.
This was about 6 odd years ago, and he's apologised for it before, but now the mouse has sacked him.
Oh.
So...
I mean, it's kind of the same principle of what's happening now with not the same subject, but the same kind of thing with social media with Kathleen Kennedy, and in extension Rian Johnson, because someone made a criticising comment, and it wasn't, from what I remember, it wasn't outright offensive what this fan or member of the community had put. They were just questioning something that a choice that had been made, and Rian Johnson's reaction was just to tell them to, in lesser words, just to go away, and that he's not going to cater for that kind of thing. And I don't know. It's what I find annoying is that Disney almost seem blind to the fact that they already have the people that can make this a success. They already have, I've already said his name, but I've forgotten it now, the director of Clone Wars. And they already have the director of Rogue One. And you know what these two have in common? They're Star Wars fans. And they understand what made it good then, and they understand what made it good now. So why aren't these people being asked to do more Star Wars films? Why aren't we taking the director of Clone Wars and putting him in charge of the Disney streaming? Well, I think he's doing Resistance, but like put him in charge of all the animated stuff that's coming out of Disney for that streaming service, and then even put him in charge of some of the, because I'm sure there have been films. Yeah, there were, because George Lucas and Spielberg, didn't they co-direct Empire?
Yeah.
So you can have two creative minds in control.
Yeah.
And I reckon that, there we go, Dave Filoni and the director of Rogue One, they'd work really, really well together to create new Star Wars content, because they're both passionate, and Dave Filoni knows a hell of a lot about it, and I dare say the Rogue One director did as well. Just put them on the front lines and make good films.
Yeah, it still confuses me why they chose Rian Johnson, because I understand he is a fairly good director in his own right, but the audience that he would bring, people who know his work, are people who have seen Breaking Bad, which is not a children's series.
No.
I think he thrives if he's allowed to use violence and more adult type themes. Which
But
he's not allowed.
unfortunately, we probably won't ever see, because of the backlash of Star Wars Episode 8. It's a lost opportunity.
It is.
Not one that I feel overly sad about, because we do have other directors, and by extension the Game of Thrones lot, who would probably do that anyway. But it seems unfortunate that as someone who's good at creating action for an older audience, that then was stuck with having to continue on a story. And again, I'll always say this, that I have a great amount of respect for anyone who actually picks up a bit of Star Wars content and makes it, or even dares to, because you are then throwing yourself into the piranha tank with us as a Star Wars community. You make one decision and they'll tear you apart.
Yep.
And that's probably why Episode 7 was so close to the original Star Wars recipe, because they felt like it was the safest thing to do.
You get that audience in, they see something that they recognise and love, and you can't really go that far wrong. Kind of.
No, there's still a split. I mean, I still don't really like Episode 7, but I have that for my own reasons. And I always say it, and it's unfortunate that I just can't wait for this current trilogy to be ended, because it's such a mishmash of stuff.
Yeah. Because
they didn't stick to a coherent way of doing it. Whether that was to please the fans or whether that was just because of new directors, I don't know. That I have no idea what Star Wars Episode 9 is going to be like, and I worry for the backlash of that. Although we've got a long time to wait now, which worries me as well, because what are we going to talk about? Because I'm hoping to do, I think I've talked to you about this, the breakdowns of each film.
Yes.
Are there any films you'd like to do? Because before I say that, Harrison has already commandeered Empire, Rogue One, and I think that's it. I think he wanted to do Episode 6, but I'm going to throw Episode 6 back on the table, and Bob wants to do Episode 3. Unfortunately, they haven't really left you with these, like, the great ones. Episode 6, though, that could be interesting. Solo, when that comes out, that could also be interesting. You can commandeer 2, and then I'm going to throw the rest back into the mix. Oh, what about Episode 2 with Robert? He would hate that.
Or throw him into the lion's den.
I may do it just because he's already said, look, come over to the flat and we'll watch Episode 2, even though he's seen it like 3 times and he just refuses to watch it again. Just so then he can then break down why he hates it, because he does hate it. And I can maybe, I don't think I'm ever going to convince him, but at least have a word or two just to show my view on it, because I still really like it. But anyway,
Has episode 4 been commandeered?
No.
I shall commandeer episode 4.
Yeah, you can commandeer 2.
And
So, yeah,
yes.
cool. I'm really looking forward to do Phantom Menace whenever whoever dares to stand beside me and talk about that, because I do have that scene with Shmi Skywalker that I wanted to pose as opposed to what we got. Also, I'm trying to track down all of the concept art books because I don't know whether the episodes 1 to 2 are available to purchase. But I like the idea of looking through those and seeing the stories they could have gone with and then the stories we got instead. I feel like Bob would probably want to do episode 7 because he really likes episode 7. And I'm down with that because I've got a lot of stuff from that concept art book that I'm like, that's a better idea. We should have had that as opposed to what we got.
Yeah.
The fact that it was already within the creative circle, it sucks that it's now not. But there you go, that's just how things run. Did you have anything else to add? Anything you found out about Star Wars? Not that there's that much bouncing around at the moment.
The only thing that I managed to find out was stuff about Phasma.
Yeah?
When I was browsing the interwebs.
Ah.
That she came from a planet that was very, very primitive.
Right.
And she was I can't remember if it was her parents who were the leaders of this tribe or whether it was her brother. But they were constantly at war with the other inhabitants of the planet. And that draws the attention of everyone's favourite double act.
Brilliant.
The Huxes. Armitage and I can't remember his dad's name.
Doesn't matter because it's never going to be as good as Armitage.
Mr. Hux, call him that. And it's when Armitage's father offers her a chance to get off the planet that she murders her entire family and her entire tribe using a weapon that she managed to make herself.
Brilliant.
She made her own armour.
Oh, so that armour, that chrome armour, that's the reason why it is like that, because she made it.
Yeah, she made it from the materials that she could find on her planet.
Right.
Her normal weapon, which she made, has poison on the blade.
Cool. Oh, is that the one she fights Finn with?
Yeah. So if she'd have got him, rip. And she conspired with Armitage to kill Dad. So they should have gone into that in some capacity, that there is a relationship between him and Phasma. But no.
I think it's too late now. I don't want an Armitage scene where he's just sitting there. It's like,
Phasma.
oh no, we had all this backstory that we should have elaborated in at least 2 films ago and didn't.
She killed my dad.
So now what? Every single time he sees an explosion, he sees Phasma's face.
PTSD.
Oh man.
I've seen some stuff, man. I've seen some stuff.
But yeah, we should have. I mean, there's a fair amount of stuff that we should have got anyway. I wanted more to be said about the elderly man that we saw at the beginning of episode 7, because he actually said, "I've seen too much. Rise and fall of the galaxy." It's like, have you? Because we haven't seen you see that.
No, where have you
We're
been?
just taking your word on it. You could have been crazy old man that just broke. Maybe maybe he was insane, and Poe Dameron was like, "Just give me the map. Just give me the map. I've seen things you wouldn't believe. Here's my little orange and white soccer ball friend. Take it."
Well, I mean, he is the three-eyed raven, so he's probably he's seen some stuff. He's seen some stuff.
So yeah, I don't know. There's a lot to talk about and nothing to talk about at the moment. So that's why I'm planning to do those film breakdowns, which I think Harrison and I am starting next week. I think we're going to do Rogue One first, and then we can jump into episode 4 with you and me. So we're going to finish up this episode, whether you are Jedi or Sith, Empire or Rebels, Resistance or First Order, Separatists or Republic. We hope you have a very good day, evening, whatever you're doing. May the Force be with you. Have a good day.